I, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
Franklin Delano Roosevelt was born into the wealthy Roosevelt family on January 30th, 1882, in Hyde Park, New York, as an only child. After primary school, Roosevelt graduated from Harvard and moved on to studying law school at Columbia. After 3 years, he gave up the law profession and began with politics. He ran for a place in the New York State Senate and broke family tradition by running as a Democrat in a Republican district. He was in this position for 2 terms. Then, at the end of his second term, he ran for the U.S. Senate. With little support from Woodrow Wilson, Roosevelt was beaten. He stayed popular and active in politics. In 1920, Roosevelt ran for vice president with James M. Cox. They were defeated by Coolidge and Harding. Roosevelt ran for governor of New York in 1928 and narrowly won the election. During his time as governor, Black Tuesday occurred.
On a Tuesday.
On this day, October 29, 1929, the U.S. stock market crashed, beginning the worst economic period of the time, the Great Depression. As governor, Roosevelt created many new social programs. With Republicans facing the blame for the Great Depression, Governor Roosevelt knew it was his opportunity to run for president. He defeated Herbert Hoover in 1932. With 13 million unemployed, President Roosevelt quickly got to business. He proposed a new economic reform, nicknaming it the New Deal. These New Deal programs included the Agricultural Adjustment Administration, which supported farm prices, the National Recovery Administration, which changed wages and prices, and many other agencies. The first series of programs, issued in early 1933, did little to improve the economy. In 1935, Roosevelt released a second wave of programs, sometimes called the Second New Deal. This issue of reforms were much more effective, including the Civilian Conservation Corporation, which employed young men, the Works Progress Administration, that employed millions of unemployed people, and the Social Security Act, which provided many Americans with disability, unemployment, and pensions. The New Deal improved the economy and dropped unemployment from 25% to 11% by the end of Roosevelt's first term. Roosevelt was elected for another term, continuing to improve the U.S. in every way. Fearing the oncoming war of World War I, President Roosevelt felt that he was the only person fit to lead the United States through a major war. He won again in 1940. In his second term, he was determined to aid Great Britain. Winston Churchill, the British Prime Minister, and Roosevelt worked closely together and declared the Four Freedoms. These freedoms, of which the post-war world should be founded, included the freedom of speech and expression, the freedom of religion, the freedom from want, and the freedom from fear. After the war, it was no doubt that he would run for a fourth term. He selected Harry S. Truman for a vice president. They won the election. In February 1945, Roosevelt attended the Yalta Conference with Soviet leader Joseph Stalin and the British Prime Minister Winston Churchill. Together, they discussed post-war organizations. This was the first time a president left the country during wartime. Returning to the United States, the president was forced to settle down and tend to his health issues. After losing his race for vice president years before, Roosevelt went on vacation in New Brunswick, Canada, and contracted polio. In denial, Roosevelt fought the disease, sure that he would find a cure. He bought the resort on Warm Springs, Georgia, in order to seek a cure. At his resort, he ordered the construction of his Warm Springs home, where he would reside while healing his legs during his fourth term. He also established the March of Dimes to fund the research programs for child paralysis. On April 12, 1945, at his resort in Warm Springs, Roosevelt passed away after suffering from a large cerebral hemorrhage. Overall, FDR was the greatest president of his time, accomplishing more than most.